My name is Andrew, and this is my story of navigating the wilderness of addiction. I grew up in a really just kind of regular middle class family. My parents are amazing people. I grew up with a twin brother that his name's Jordan, and me and him were thick as thieves growing up. We did everything together. My parents dressed us in the same clothes. We had the same hobbies. Jordan was always kind of the wild child. He was always the adventurous, fearless one. I was the more reserved, kind of timid kid. But we were polar opposites. We were just very much on different wavelengths, but at the same time, we were very much like we just did everything together. We were always there for each other. Overall, it was a wonderful childhood, growing up. I got into high school. We moved from Coleman, Alabama to Vestavia Hills, Alabama when I was 14. And so that definitely formed some insecurities. I had kind of been picked on coming through 7th grade. I was kind of the run of the litter, smaller kid. I was really looking for an outlet just to have some acceptance and to fit in, essentially. And so that led me into, a crowd that was doing a lot of things that I wasn't raised to do. Going into high school, it was like those things continued to progress. Me and Jordan continued to hang out and party and, get plugged in with the wrong people. It was all very naive, just kind of experimental stuff where, we just wanted to go try something, try smoking weed, try smoking pot for the first time, go get a bottle of liquor and try getting drunk for the first time. And, it started off very young, but then it very quickly progressed and became like somewhat of a lifestyle and an identity for both me and Jordan. We were kind of like, we relished in the fact of being like the bad boys. We started, dabbling in pills and drinking a lot and just running with a really just rough crowd. And it was all kind of behind this guise of wanting to be accepted. And, I would do anything, say anything to make, the people around me like me. And so, when we hit probably 17, 18, coming out through high school, we began to branch off into very different paths. I was going to college, I was, working, I kind of had it quote unquote all together, as far as like outside circumstances would view. And Jordan ended up experimenting with heroin at the time, opiates, Lortabs, pills, Xanax. It was kind of the whole nines. Probably 6 months after graduating high school, he went to his first treatment center. And, he was able to experience a lot of freedom in that. But basically from my early 20s to my mid 20s, Jordan was in this constant cycle of just rehabs and getting kicked out of his houses and getting kicked out of my parents' house and, being broke. He was destitute. It was rehab after rehab and halfway home after halfway home. And, it was just this constant battle for him. It was interesting because, during my time, it looks like I have everything together. I graduated from UAB at the time. I got married. I was coming on with the family business, and I was making pretty decent money. I was self-sufficient, independent, and I just had this guise up. I had this mask up. I began to micromanage life, but at the end of the day, I was just exhausted from it. And at the end of the day, there was no better solution than to crawl inside a bottle, and just escape. That's where my alcoholism really began to take shape. It was getting such a grip on me that I had to become dishonest about it. And, I started hiding bottles underneath my couch and in the closet and, basically in my car, anywhere that I could hide liquor. I had it stashed, and just it started to become unmanageable for me. I had this outside Andrew that everyone loved and thought I had all the stuff together. I had the house, the cars, the good job, an amazing wife, but I was just melting away on the inside, and it obviously. I was able to hide a lot of my addiction from my wife at the time, but you can only imagine how much shame that brought on me. Over time, it began to unfold, and the drinking got worse and worse and worse and worse until there was no hiding it anymore. It was very obvious that I could once I started, I could not stop drinking, and it was bleeding in Monday through Sunday, and from outside looking in, it looked like I had everything. And that's what the bizarre thing about it is. Even to this day, it's like everything on the outside was picture perfect, but on the inside, I was just completely rotten out. I was completely bankrupt emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and it was just, I was living a lie. And that was the worst part about it. Basically, as my drinking is upticking, Jordan is continuing on this kind of vicious cycle of, getting into recovery, getting out, relapse after relapse after relapse. At that point in time, he had overdosed, 5 or 6 times, and they had brought him back to life. And, he was just piecemealing sobriety together, and at that time, I couldn't stop drinking, and I was completely hopeless. Like, it was literally like an impending doom of the fact that, like, I am going to die a drunk, and like, there is no controlling this, there is no helping me, no saving me. Got to a point where I just had kind of like a white light moment and realized that I needed help, and that this secret that I had, my drinking career, my alcoholism I couldn't keep it secret anymore. And so one Sunday after church, I ended up picking up my wife, and I was just in tears, and I literally could barely speak, and I just told her that, like, hey, I have a drinking problem, like I can't quit. And she looked at me and she said that she had been praying that I would have that realization for about 6 months to a year, that I would come to the realization that, I had a real problem with alcohol and that I couldn't quit on my own. Might I remind you, this is in the midst of having a beautiful, baby boy that, we had hoped and tried for 3 years. Sitting in the next room, and the good job, the good house, an amazing wife, and that's what addiction does to you, though. I mean, it literally just robs you of everything that you have in life. During that time, though, I was able to begin my path of, like, trying to get plugged into recovery. And me and Jordan were actually able to go to some meetings together, and we were able to talk recovery a little bit. But it was always, I don't know if it was my own insecurities or some resentments that he might have had, but it was like he kind of looked at me and was like, yeah, you don't know jack about being an addict, because he had been through such a goat rope and such a hard life of just recovery houses and living on the streets and everything else. It was hard for us to kind of relate on that front, but it was still neat just to have that common bond of, like, hey, we're both in this together. He just couldn't get it together, and eventually it claimed his life. And it was he's been struggling with addiction for 15 years. it was, I was talking to Tyler about this, was the fact that it's difficult to talk about because, I had prayed so many times that God would heal him from his addiction. Because, when you're a heroin addict, like, you don't get a whole lot of chances, and he had already overdosed probably 5 or 6 times. And I had prayed to God that he would relieve him of his addiction, and ultimately, over the past 2 years since his death, I've come to the realization he did relieve him of his addiction. It was not the way that I saw fit. It wasn't the way that, I thought that he would do it, but, ultimately God won, God's grace won. And, Jordan was a firm believer in God and in Jesus. And, I think that, I know that he's in heaven right now.
So what would you say to those that are still struggling in addiction, that are where you were a year ago? What would you say to them now?
I would say that God hasn't given up on you yet. That His grace and His love is just, it's more than you could ever imagine, and it's overwhelming to think about, and it's something that I have to remind myself of every day. It's that there's nothing I can do, there's nothing I can say that is going to pull me away from the grace and the love of God. And that if you have faith and you're willing to take the action, just to do the next right thing and put one foot in front of the other, that God's going to step in and do the rest for you. And that you haven't gone too far, that there's always hope, and that there's an incredible amount of people in the Birmingham and Alabama and nationwide that are there for you, to support you and love on you, and to help guide you through the path to sobriety. Unbound Grace has been an awesome avenue for me to come out of treatment and to still be plugged in and still have fellowship, to have community, to have leadership, to have somebody that's pouring into my life and holding me accountable, someone that truly cares about me. Treatment is a wonderful vessel that takes you halfway across the river, and then you're there. You're stuck in the middle of the river, and treatment is an amazing gift, but at the same time, you've got to have somebody that's there to meet you on the other side, that's going to help you, walk it out and put this stuff into practice. Honestly, it was easy to stay sober in treatment because that was my only choice. As long as I stayed in treatment, I was going to continue to stay sober. But facing life and jobs and kids and marriages and, broken relationships and stuff like that it's a difficult path. And, I'll never forget that the first day that I came out of treatment, I just sat on my couch and was just in total shock because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. And Tyler at Unbound Grace was such a resource, just to be able to talk and have a comforting voice to just tell me everything's going to be okay, and God's really blessed me just with the ability to have true joy and peace. I mean, that's the peace that comes from waking up in the morning and not wondering what I did the night before. The peace of just fully trusting in Him and just surrendering the outcome of life. It's like it gets exhausting playing God, and to just release control and let go of your hands, and to know that whatever happens, whether it's good or bad, like that, if something good happens, then thank you, Lord. If something bad happens, then how is God using this situation to make me grow and, to get me out of these uncomfortable ruts? Usually when I do something uncomfortable like this interview, it's usually because God wants me, I have the ability to do something for God, and and it usually grows me, and I hope to God that it helps somebody else. I'm like, what other use of the testimony that I have, and what God's brought me through, to help another addict, and give somebody else some hope. and I'm hoping that it's just gonna give some light to somebody and plant a seed that somebody else can come along and water one day.